All right, so in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to build this web page using Bootstrap. So the first thing that I'm going to do is open up a new tab and go to Bootstrap. Basically, you need to have the Bootstrap documentation open while you're building this web page so that you can quickly search up all of the different aspects of the Bootstrap code that you need. So I'm going to go to the Bootstrap website and we need to read the documentation, right? So the first thing is to make sure that you have the basic HTML template that has Bootstrap installed in it. So if you kind of read through this quick start, you'll see that here, this is pretty much what we need, right? Because this includes the CSS to make Bootstrap work, and it also includes the JavaScript that you'll need for all of the, all the drop downs, slide outs, all the activity kind of stuff needs JavaScript to work. This is going to install the JavaScript code that Bootstrap uses to make all those things function. All right. I mean, you don't need this part. This is just, hello world, but this is where you are going to write all your code. All right. But make sure that you have this. So you can pretty much just copy this and make sure you change the title to, I don't know, project 2 or something. All right. So yeah, copy this into your index.html file. And now we can get started on building this web page. Okay. So again, we are going to start from the top and work our way down to the bottom. So this section up here on your web page, this is called the nav bar area. And Bootstrap has a standard nav bar. So here for you, you basically have your logo here on the left, and then you have your nav menu. So if you go to the Bootstrap documentation and you click on this search box up here and you type nav bar, you see, it'll basically have navbar and how it works. Yeah, just click on this, how it works here. And this will take you to the documentation on how to use the Bootstrap navbar. And remember, Bootstrap has mobile responsiveness built into it, because if you scroll down here, you'll see this is an example of a Bootstrap navbar. You see, it has the navbar, which is kind of like the logo area, and then it has your nav menu. And I'm going to show you what this looks like in the mobile view so that you can see why Bootstrap is so powerful. So I'm just going to right click and go to inspect. And I'm going to click on this toggle here, see toggle device. And it's already set to iPhone 12. So this is the website that we're on. This is the mobile view. And I'm going to scroll down to where we were looking at that example. And you see, boom, you see how this looks now? This is Bootstrap. So the Bootstrap code makes things look good in the desktop layout and in the mobile view as well. So as long as you have the correct Bootstrap code, your website is going to adjust to different screen sizes automatically. If you're watching this video, that means you're interested in learning to code and making a career switch to becoming a software engineer. And that's exactly what I did. My name is TJ Oyeniyi, and I'm a self-taught software engineer that still works as a software engineer while teaching complete beginners like yourself how to code and help them to get jobs as software engineers by working with them as their mentor. To learn more about working with me as your mentor, check out my coding bootcamp, Roots Technology. I'll put the link in the description below as well. Right, because if you click on this icon, boom, it now has your actual navbar menu here. So we need to use this example. So let me take it out of mobile view, out of inspect. Let me go back up to where we are. All right, so this is the navbar that we are going to use, and we are just going to take away the parts and pieces of this that we don't need in our navbar. Right, because if I go back to ours, we just need this logo area and we need our navigation links. And that's here, right? This is our logo area. You can see this is like the actual code for it, navbar brand, logo. And then here, these are our navigation items. So this code here is showing you how to build this Bootstrap navbar. And, this code is showing you how to build different aspects, right? So if you have a navigation menu with a drop down, like this with the drop down, the code shows you here how to create a drop down using Bootstrap, right? So this code is showing you the different types of navigation menu items that you can create. If you want to create a link that's disabled, the code here is going to show you that, you basically use this code and you have to add this class. You see, Bootstrap uses classes that has a CSS rules assigned to those classes. So don't change the name of these classes. Like, do not change the name of Bootstrap classes. If you want to add your own styling, you create your own class and then you add it to this. But you don't customize or change the Bootstrap classes, okay? Don't change the name of them. So when we look at our navigation menu, we just need this logo area and we need like the same links for all of our navigation menu items. So obviously we don't need a drop down. So, you can copy this code and then delete the parts that we don't need. We don't need this. This is the drop down part. We don't need this disabled part down here. We don't even need the search box and this button, right? And the code for that is where it's here. This form. So you would just delete all that. So link and home, what's the difference here? So home, so this is link, and so home is showing active. You see, that's the main difference between the code for the home nav item and the link item. So basically active is like, this is the current page that we're on the home page. We don't really need that either. So really the main type of navigation item, nav item code that we need is this one. So we will basically copy this code and delete all the other stuff that we don't need, all this drop down stuff, disable stuff, this form, we don't need that. We will delete this home, and then we will use this to create our nav items. So we would use this for home, about, our services, our team, contact. So how many is that? 5. So we would copy and paste this 5 times or 4 times, since you already have one here. So we need 5 of these, and then you would change this to the name of the menu item that you're doing. So this would be what I expect to see inside of your body tag. Like, this should be the first code inside of your body tag, and that should pretty much have your nav item done, right? So in terms of your logo area, that's this where it says nav bar. So you would just change that to insert your logo here or whatever. You can do an image or whatever, or just leave it as a text logo, and boom, you're pretty much done with the nav area. Yeah, I mean, that's it. You can use Flexbox to put a space between this drop down area and this nav bar area, but let's just kind of focus on getting the main layout done in Bootstrap, and then you can do all that later with CSS. If you're learning a lot in this video, keep in mind, this is what learning to code with me as your mentor is like. Anytime you get stuck and you need help, you can schedule a Zoom call with me where we work one-on-one together on an issue like this, or you can just email me and I'll get back to you that way. But having a mentor there to guide you and ask questions to is the best way to speed up your coding journey, so that you're not wasting time being stuck or working on things that don't matter. So if you're ready to start your coding journey and become a software engineer, come join me in my coding bootcamp at www.rootstechnology.info. And mind you, Bootstrap has Flexbox code, so you just type flex, and boom, you can now read about all the different classes that you can use for Flexbox. All right, so now in terms of doing our main layout, this is where the Bootstrap grid comes in. You use the Bootstrap grid to basically get your layout set, and then you can add your content into it. So let's go to the documentation and look up grid. Yeah, so this is the grid system. Let's go to the example, and boom, this is it, right? So do you see these 3 boxes? That's kind of like down here that we have, these 4 boxes, right? Or I mean, heck, even here where we have 2 boxes, we have 1 box here, 1 box here. And remember, the way that we did it in project 1 is that we had a main box, right? We had a main div that was our container. So it's the same kind of concept here. So if you go to the grid system, you'll see this is the code that creates this. All right. You are going to have a div that you use as your container. And inside of your container, you see how the content is side by side. That's a row. You have content that's structured in a row. So that's why you have another div and you put the row class on it. And then inside of that row, the content is broken down into smaller boxes, into their own self-contained boxes, right? Those are your columns. And inside of the column, this is where you will now put your content. This is where you would now put your content. All right. So for us, we can basically copy this code. And if we look at this top part here, right, we have our main container, and our row, right? A row, when you have things side by side, that's a row. Like you need a row when you have things side by side. If you only have one thing that has nothing on the left or right, you don't need a row, okay? But you still need a container. All right, so now that we have so we basically have a container. You don't need the text center unless you want your text centered. And we have our row. So now how many columns do we need? Well, here we only need 2 columns, right? 1, 2, right? The content is broken down into 2 boxes side by side. So now that we have our column, we now put our content inside of the div that's with the class column. So inside of that div, we will now put our p tag and put this text, and inside of the second column we'll put our image tag. Does this make sense, right? Like, this is pretty similar to what you did earlier on, but the main thing is that you're probably wondering is, well, how do we get the ratio right in terms of the width, right? Because this side or this column is bigger than this column, right? Bootstrap has that as well. And that's called breakpoints. So those are all of your breakpoints. Columns are incredibly flexible. There are 12 template columns available per row. So basically like this, right? Let me see if there's any other example. Yeah, so basically, actually, open up another tab in Google Bootstrap grid system. And I'm gonna include links to this below. So definitely check that out, but look up Bootstrap grid system and click on the W3 Schools link. So let me go there. Yeah, this is going to give you a way better visual of what I'm talking about in terms of the column. So Bootstrap's grid system allows up to 12 columns across the page. So each row can have up to 12 columns in it. All right. Each row can have up to 12 columns. So these are just different examples. You can have span 4, you can have a column span 4. The main takeaway here is that the rows have to add up to 12. They have to add up to 12, right? You see, this column spans 12 wide. It's 12 columns wide. This one, you see 6 and 6 is 12. 4 and 8 is 12, etc., etc. And this is the format that you do column and then, define what the breakpoint is in terms of if it's for like a mobile device, you would use SM, SM, and then you have MD and LG. So if you go back here and you look at the responsive breakpoints, that'll kind of like help you out. Or you could just let Bootstrap do it. And instead of setting a breakpoint, you can just use column and not put any actual breakpoint. You can just do column hyphen like this. You can just do column hyphen and put the actual number of the width that you want it to be. All right. But I definitely recommend that you always set a width for the mobile view and the desktop view because things are going to look different there. All right. So up here, we can basically set this to column 4 and this one to column 8. Remember, everything has to add up to 12. And that should pretty much be it. Right, so you basically have a div that's your container, right? You have a div that's your, let me go all the way. Yeah, you have your container div, right? And you have to follow this structure. And inside of that, because you have items side by side, that means that you have a row. So inside of that, that's when you can now put your columns. And you have 2 columns. So you have this one and this one. You have 2 columns here, right? This column and this column. And this second column is bigger than the first one. So you would set this second one to whatever ratio makes sense to you, right? You can set this one to column hyphen 8. So if that means you have to set this one to column hyphen 4, right? Because the number of columns has to add up to 12. And just to cover an important concept that you should have already covered this inside of the Bootstrap tutorial. But definitely make sure that you look over these grid system rules, right? Because it's telling here rows must be placed within a container or container fluid, and you use rows to create horizontal groups of columns. And then this third one, content should be placed within the rows. Content should be placed within columns, and only columns may be the immediate children of rows, okay? When you have a row, the very next thing has to be a column. You can't have some other random stuff. All right. It has to be a column. So these rules are very important for you to read and understand when it comes to you building out your layout. Okay. All right. So you're pretty much going to do that for the rest for this section too, right? Because this is your container and you have a row as well. And inside of that row, you have two columns, right? This is one column and this is a second column. So you can basically set this column on the left to column -8, this column on the right, column -4. All right. Now down here, again, this is where, it gets a bit tricky, but it shouldn't be. So we are going to have our container class, our div with the container class, and we can then put our heading. We wouldn't put a row yet. You don't put a row because remember, a row is for content that's side by side. Do you see anything beside this? Right? Like there is nothing beside this heading. This is just a heading. So immediately inside of our container, we will put our heading. And then we will create our row so that we can group this content together, right? Because inside of our row, we have how many columns? 4 columns. We have 4 equal columns inside of our row. We have 4 columns inside of our row. All right. And these columns are going to be how wide? Column -3, because 4 times 3 is 12. Remember, the columns have to add up to 12. All right. So now, another part of Bootstrap I should introduce you to, this like structure. You see how it like has an image with a heading and some text, right? Like this is called a card. This is a very common structure that you see online on a bunch of different websites. It's called a card. So Bootstrap has code for that, to help you build cards. You just look up card. And you go to the about page and boom, you see it, right? This is literally the example that we just saw. This is the same structure. You basically have an image, then you have a heading or a title, subtitle, subheading, then you have some text and a button. This is the code to create that. You don't need this style width and stuff though. Like you don't need this. But this is the code that will go inside of your column to create this card. So now you can just put your image, then you put your, you see how they have the heading, right? The H5, and they put the class card title. So you put whatever title yours is, you put your text, you see card text, and then you would put your button. So they are using an A tag, but using a button class, and Bootstrap has code. If you look up buttons, Bootstrap has code that basically creates these like buttons, you see? So this is the code that should be inside of your column here. And that's it. Like that's the Bootstrap that you need to basically build this web page. One thing that you might be having issues with is that your images might be overflowing. Remember when we first, in project 1, that we set the width of those images to 100%. Well, you can also look up in Bootstrap images. As soon as I type that up, it comes up responsive images, right? So how do I make an image responsive? And it shows you how to do that by adding an image fluid class. And this will set the max width to 100% and height auto. So you basically have an image tag and you just add this class, image fluid. And this will do exactly what you need to do in terms of making sure it doesn't overflow anymore, okay? So try to get that done and look around, before writing any custom CSS code. Anything that you're trying to do, first look it up inside the Bootstrap documentation to see if there's a Bootstrap class that'll help you to do it. If there is, you always want to lean towards just writing Bootstrap instead of writing your own custom code. All right, so just try to get this basic layout done first in Bootstrap, and then send me what you have, and I'll take a look and I'll give you feedback on how to potentially improve it or answer any questions or just any issues that you have. All right. Let me tell you how learning to code changed my life. I went from making $37,000 a year and living paycheck to paycheck to my first job as a software engineer paid me $75,000 a year. That's almost double what I was making before. So now I don't have to fly Spirit Airlines all the time anymore, and I can actually afford a real vacation. And since I change jobs every 1 to 2 years, I started making 6 figures my 3rd year as a software engineer. That's what this career change can do for you. Now I have the skills to learn anything technical and get a job in a lot of different roles and industries because of my technical skills. So don't waste time putting off learning to code if you know you're interested in making a career change. Get started now so you can be ready to start applying to jobs soon. Come learn to code with me as your mentor at rootstechnology.info.